Met fans, welcome back to another edition of the Terry Collins Show, presented by Tunnel the Towers, supporting America's greatest heroes. Donate just $11 per month by going to t2t.org. That's t2t.org. I'm John Arezzi. The Mets saw some cracks in their starting pitchers and to their momentum on this homestand, and are now on the road for a big 6 games against the division rivals, 3 against the Braves, and more importantly, 3 against the Philadelphia Phillies this weekend. And the Phillies just swept the Toronto Blue Jays, and the Phillies are now just 2.5 games behind the Mets in the NL East. We're going to cover it all with SNY insider Andy Martino. Terry Collins will join us later in the show as well to discuss what happened 10 years ago this month during that 2015 season, and we'll have another Tunnel to Towers Hero of the Week. But let's get right to the leadoff. Joining us, the writer and analyst that covers both the Mets and Yankees for SNY, also a regular on the network's Baseball Night in New York, a lead insider in the game, and an author of 2 great books as well. We welcome back Andy Martino to the Terry Collins Show. Andy, how you doing?
I'm good, John. I'm doing better than the 2 local teams who just came off of very rough weekends.
Isn't that something? I mean, the Yankees, I believe, were shut out for the first time this season against the Sox.
And swept for the first time, yeah.
And swept for the first time. And Boston made some big news as well before we get into the Mets stuff. I mean, Devers has now been shipped to San Francisco, and that was a long time coming, I think. There was a lot of controversy with this guy this season when he was asked to change positions and some other things. But he's for the fan base, I feel sorry for them, because the Sox have had a kind of almost like a tradition of sending their best players, outcast, from Garcia Parra to Mookie Betts and now Devers.
Hey, look, though, the Garcia Parra and Betts ones, I guess you could look at those as 2 different ends of the spectrum. We'll see which one this goes to, because we all remember how mopey Garcia Parra got shipped out of town, sort of helped to galvanize that Idiots team and form its character in 2004, right? So that was addition by subtraction, clubhouse-wise. Devers obviously was not in a good place with all the things that were being asked of him with position changes. It's hard to see in this one how it makes the Red Sox better this year, obviously. But we probably would have said that the morning after the Garcia Parra trade too. So we'll see. It doesn't look like the same kind of thing, but I guess we'll see. You got to play the games.
Yeah, and the package they got back was not like eye-opening in any way.
It was more, I guess, just the getting rid of the money and getting rid of the guy who they didn't seem to like anymore. So there we go. Someone else's problems other than the teams that we talk about. And especially as a Met fan, enjoy that someone else is having drama now. And that, you got swept by the Rays, but that's baseball. The drama is going over in Boston.
Yeah, that's very true. But, it seemed with the Mets, it was they started off at home and got that sweep against the Nationals, and everything was, party atmosphere. We're never going to lose again. And then it really seemed like they got derailed a little bit over the weekend. They're still 2.5 games up over the Phillies, but it seemed like everything came off the rails and kind of set the tone for the weekend on Friday when Clay Holmes was removed after 5 quality innings, and that was kind of a surprise. He'd only thrown 79 pitches at the time. At that point, the Mets were up 5-1. Then Paul Blackburn and Max Kranick proceeded to give up 6 runs in the top of the 6th. It resulted in a 7-5 comeback win for the Rays. Talk to us about the Clay Holmes situation and the revelations about Holmes after the game and how the Mets might be using him as we move forward to the midpoint of the season.
Sure. So, to rewind, I guess, John, as you're sort of alluding to, everything was great for the Mets after that National Series. Although you could say that these concerns with the rotation began when Senga pulled his hammy at the end of that series. Yes. And so that was already something that was going on. But the thought in Mets land was on Thursday night when everyone went to bed was, well, at least we've got all this other starting pitching. And then David Stearns does a once per homestand media availability. He did it in this case on Friday afternoon. And most of the questions were about, are you surprised how great your pitchers are? Is Jeremy Hefner a genius? Is Desi Drushel, the assistant pitching coach, a genius? Are you a genius? Oh my God, this rotation. It was like in a moment where you almost sitting there going, "Uh-oh, the baseball gods are going to like this conversation." It's just a little, through no fault of Stearns or the Mets, it's getting a little congratulatory, and here we are in June. So the baseball gods had already begun taking their revenge because, unbeknownst to us, other than Senga, Clay Holmes was sore coming out of his start in Denver, which is sort of comforting in a sense because Denver does that to pitchers. So if you're going to be sore coming out of anywhere, you think, at least there's an explanation with that altitude, and recovery is typically harder coming out of Denver. And I asked Clay on Friday night if he thought that specifically was what was going on. He said, yeah, it's probably a Denver thing. But there was, I think, reason for some concern beyond that because of the fact that he's pitching so many more innings than he has as a reliever. So, is this the point where he's starting to get sore? As of this moment, John, the answer to that is no. I can tell you that Holmes has recovered fine off of Friday and is going to start Thursday as expected. So, to be honest with you, I was wondering, is this going to be a short-term IL situation to give him a reprieve? But it's not going that way at all as of right now. So what the Mets did to manage it instead of anything that extreme was to put him on a pitch count of 85 prior to the game on Friday. Holmes is on board, training staff, coaching staff. It just made sense. And there was a really sensible script for how to run that game on Friday, which made all the sense in the world. Holmes for those 85 pitches. So he's through 79 after 5. That's the same thing. You don't want to start another batter in the 6th, right? I mean, you could give him 1, I guess, but 79, 5 clean, 1 run, great. Good job, Clay. You did your job under tonight's restrictions. So you bring in Paul Blackburn, who's not in the rotation, but is going to start on Wednesday in place of Senga. I know you know all this, but just to rewind and set the full scene. So Blackburn is supposed to probably finish that game, and then great, tune up. It's just like you had a short start and you're ready for Wednesday. And where the script, of course, when you're piggybacking like that, can go sideways, is if the second guy in who's its starting pitcher, the piggybacker, doesn't have it. And then you're using your bullpen anyway. This is the case. Blackburn didn't have it. Kranick doesn't have it. The game gets out of control. It's a totally justifiable loss in a long season, even though they all hurt. The Dodgers, who are supposed to be the model of everything, do this kind of thing all the time. Hell, the Dodgers even punted NLCS games last year, let alone games in June.
Yes, they did.
It's a long-term strategy to keep your pitching as healthy as you can. And it all made perfect sense. It just didn't work. And then Tyler McGill on Saturday did not pitch well. And Griffin Canning on Sunday did not pitch well. So those are different concerns that are opening up. But that's where the Mets find themselves as we sit here and talk on Monday morning, John.
Yep. And getting back to Senga, now we're happy to learn that this is not as serious as it could have been. And he may be ready to come back mid to end of July is what I'm hearing on the reporting.
Well, it's shut down for 2 weeks. They're hoping to keep him throwing a little because usually if it's if it's a no throw, then you have to add at least those 2 weeks to the build up. So if he can keep his arm live during the hamstring recovery, that'll get him back faster. But the Senga recovery time is the most confusing recovery time of anybody's, in certainly on the Mets, if not in baseball. Like last year, he was medically cleared for a very long time and just didn't feel ready. And the Mets staff was trying to figure out, well, what? And what do we do here? What do you want to do? What's going on? And at one point, Senga, I remember this is pretty funny. At one point, Senga's in the bullpen, and a ball comes out of the bullpen. But it wasn't a baseball. It was a beach ball. And Senga was throwing a beach ball as part of his process. A volleyball. A volleyball. Not like one. I was thinking one of those Dodger Stadium bouncy balls. No, it was a volleyball he was throwing. My mistake.
Has a little bit more weight to it.
Yeah. So excuse me on that. But the coaching staff was like, what's the volleyball for? So it's very hard to figure out this guy's process and when he's going to return. And they do believe they're on a better page with communication right now, but still, to give an estimate is tricky given the history.
Yeah, he certainly they had a bit of a learning curve last year with the way he felt ready to come back and how the Mets felt. So maybe they're more on the same page this year. There's a year of trust there.
They think
They
so. Yeah.
Yeah, so that should work out fine. We hope he comes back better because poor Pete Alonso, who made that high
Yeah.
throw, kind of was like devastated after Senga left the game, and Pete had a rough weekend at Citi Field, and I guess Senga's interpreter went up to Pete and says he felt it when he left the mound, and not necessarily,
Yeah.
because he had to leap for that. Was that placating Pete, not
Well,
making him feel bad, or whatever it was?
either
It
way,
was
it
like
was nice of him to say.
I felt bad for both guys.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, Pete Alonso's a guy that does, not that a lot of people wouldn't, but excuse me, he cares about that. He's already mad about what's going on with his throwing, trying to manage that, and then to hurt a teammate in his mind, obviously, he's going to get really down about that. He's a good guy like that, and
Yeah.
so whenever Senga actually felt it, it was nice of him to tell Hero to say that. Let's leave it at that.
Yeah. Absolutely. Well, two of the other Mets injured pitchers are on their way back. Frankie Montas first, and then hopefully in a few weeks, Sean Manaea will be back on the mound for the Mets. Montas coming back as early as this week, from what I
Well,
understand, but or is that a question mark still, because he's got what does he have, an 8, or he's got a higher
yeah,
ERA in the minor leagues? He's
it's not
not
going
doing
well.
well at all in rehab.
No, so his rehab clock expires on, I believe, June 22nd. So the decision time is coming up. The options there would be the player consents to extending the rehab because of a physical setback, but that doesn't. So far, the way the Mets are describing it, they don't appear to be setting it up for that because they're saying physically he's okay. But they also say that he had a significant lat injury and he's not feeling right yet. Not right, like he's not injured, but he's not there. He's certainly not sharp,
Yeah,
as we can see by his
yeah, he's
numbers.
not
So
sharp.
there's no, it's a fluid situation because of what's going on with the rotation. For example, if Holmes had ended up on the IL, then okay, well, maybe you have to start Montas. That's not going to happen as of right now. So if everybody's still healthy and relatively effective, I guess you can make Montas a long man when you have to roster him. But that's an evolving situation that's made more difficult by the fact that he's just not. He's not. His pitches obviously aren't as sharp. I haven't seen him pitch. I've seen obviously he's been in the minor leagues. I've seen the line, and I've heard the reports that he just doesn't have the sharpness yet. So they're trying to figure out what to do about that and how to utilize him under those
Yeah.
circumstances.
And
Yeah.
Manaea is on track. I know he had a
Yeah.
bit of a rough outing, and he did better in the second one.
Yeah. So he's had the 2 in Brooklyn, 1 or 2 more at least, and he's had a rough recovery, much later now than we would have expected when he first had that injury in spring training. Late April even seemed sort of reasonable when he first went down. So he is getting closer, and we'll see. What I'm interested to see when he comes back is that whole throwing across his body thing. Do you remember SNY at one point last year showed him throwing in the bullpen to the catcher on the other mound?
Yes, I do
So he's
remember that.
really was working on that, and that was something that those mechanics were something that he learned from watching Chris Sale, and it really worked for
Mhm.
him. And when he got hurt, speculatively speaking, there were people around the team going, "Well, maybe that's what happens when you throw a different way than you've thrown your whole life." So I'll be interested to see where he's at, mechanics-wise, approach-wise, results-wise, and health-wise when he comes back. And if he sticks with that extreme kind of dropping down and throwing across his body thing, that some wonder if that contributed to the side injury. It would make sense along the kinetic chain. I'm no doctor, but that's been wondered if that's part of what happened.
Yeah. Both Tyler McGill and Griffin Canning have had some poor outings as well, so there's little cracks in the armor there. McGill is always really impressed in the beginning of a season, and then he
Mhm.
kind of like
Yeah.
starts underperforming. So that's kind of a tradition with McGill, and Canning came out this season and started doing some great things in the beginning, but the last 2-3 starts have not been as good as they were in the beginning. So what do the Mets do with both of these gentlemen once they start getting these reinforcements back? I mean, there are more decisions that got to be
Yeah.
made by Stearns.
Yeah, well, assuming everyone was healthy and effective, McGill certainly was the one at risk of being optioned when there was a logjam because number one, he has options. So does David Peterson, but you're not using that option right now. That's for sure.
No.
So with McGill, it's unfortunate that it's gone this way and that he might face a roster crunch at some point and end up back in AAA because the Mets were hoping that this was the breakthrough season. They've tweaked his arsenal over the years. They hope that they've continued to, and he's continued to build his confidence. There are times when it's top of the rotation stuff and results. And there are times when the results just aren't there, as you said, John. And the Mets have been searching. There's no easy answer for why. They've been searching for that for a couple of years now. They really believe in this guy. Jeremy Hefner's been on McGill as a top of the rotation guy for years now. And you don't blame him. It's like, this guy's got it. Look at his stuff. So they're just working through that, but he might at some point in the season be the victim of a numbers crunch. And Canning has good stuff. I think when he came to the Mets, a lot of people maybe inaccurately thought of him kind of a touch and feel guy, back of the rotation, but he's got some velo behind that fastball, and the slider is really good. So I believe in him as a big league starter based on what we've seen, but we also have to remember that this is a guy carrying some rough stats from last year and career-wise into the Mets. So the regression of the mean is probably there too, and we end up with a mid-back of the rotation guy who's valuable, but maybe a little bit closer to the guy who pitched for the Angels over the last number of years.
It's certainly a challenge for the GM and the manager and the pitching coach. I mean, there's a lot of things that have happened over the course of the season already with all of these arms, but the bottom line, and I don't know how long it'll continue, is the Mets still have the best starting pitcher ERA. Is it in the National League? Is it in the majors? Or have they now gone over 3 with their weekend performances?
After this weekend, John, I would have to double check that. Certainly going into the weekend, they did. But
and losing Senga, that's gonna that's another thing. So hey, listen, everything is peaks and valleys during the course of a very long baseball season, and we're experiencing that right now with the Mets, and they're still in first place. So everything is still in Mets land. It's not Panic City.
No, they've earned that because
unless you're a guy like Frank the Tank,
Well, I haven't. I don't follow Frank's socials. I don't need that kind of energy in my life.
No,
but
you
I
don't.
Bet he,
no, you don't.
I bet he wasn't happy
does.
over the at the end of the weekend. I think the Mets have earned a lot more benefit of the doubt than they have at other junctures where they've struggled in history. Of course, they're a really good team. I don't know if their pitching is going to hold up health or results wise to the point where they're going to be able to sustain this 100+ win pace. Nobody knows that, but they're a good team and they'll remain a good team. And so we'll see. It's an interesting week. It's an interesting stretch, obviously, with the divisional games. And Philly coming up on the weekend, I don't really love that team ever since a lot of flaws were exposed by the Mets last year. Really, a lot of flaws with their offense in particular, and the playoffs got exposed. And they've had their issues this year, and they continue to have some health issues in their pitching. So I'm not that scared of the Phillies, but at the same time, they're getting closer to the Mets, and those games are going to be obviously important.
Yes, they will. They should be exciting games this weekend in Philly. On the positive side of the pitching stuff, and then we'll move on to the offense, David Peterson had a fabulous complete game shutout last week.
Yeah.
And you did something on your TikTok account, which I found really interesting about the relationship organizationally between player, coaches, front office, manager. So elaborate on that a little bit when it comes to David Peterson and that trust factor that's there now.
Yeah, there was a lot of front-loaded collaboration relationships in play to let that happen, John. And I'm glad you brought that up. So let's start with a president of baseball operations in David Stearns, who hired a manager to do the job. And that might seem like, well, yeah, but there's micromanaging that goes on from front offices to managers and coaching staffs in this game. And David Stearns, in a lot of ways, really doesn't actually play the part that he looks. Ivy League, the quarter zip. He doesn't actually talk like one of those guys. He doesn't use words all that often, like probabilities and all this kind of business speak that we hear from GMs. Like Craig Breslow in Boston's kind of famous for this now, even though he played. He talks like it's like that. Just as I'm going off track now, but there was a scene in The Simpsons once where the actual Bill James was on it, and he goes, "Hi, I'm Bill James, and I made baseball as fun as doing your taxes." And Stearns understands the human side more than people think. So on that, it's like, okay, it's the manager's job to form, and the pitching coach's job, of course, to form rotations with your players and your pitchers, and to form relationships. And that's already set, this mutual trust between Mendoza and Peterson going into this game. Peterson's at, I believe, 96 pitches coming out of the 8th inning on Wednesday. I thought there was no chance he would be out for the 9th because he was a little lucky in the 8th. The contact was getting harder. He was having trouble putting away hitters more so than the rest of the game. He like, okay, let's finish. Let's end this as a good start before it unravels. And I just assumed. So when he came running out in the field for the 9th and the crowd went crazy, I was like, really? But what happened behind the scenes, which we didn't know at the time, was that human stuff. So Mendoza, who's already empowered to make these decisions by the organization, notices that Peterson was avoiding him in the dugout coming out from the 8th. And he thought, oh, that's a good sign that he wants to go back out there, because starting pitchers take themselves out of the games more than anybody ever knows. The manager always says, well, I thought he was done. No, the pitcher went like this in the tunnel or to his coach or something, and the manager took the fall for it. That's what usually happens. So if the starting pitcher's trying to avoid the manager, well, I guess he wants to stay out there. So Mendoza knew he had to have the conversation. He didn't want it to be on camera. Took Peterson down into the tunnel between the dugout and the clubhouse, and they had a conversation. And he said, so Mendoza started with like, so this is a tough one. And Peterson just goes, let me finish. And Mendoza goes, all right, I trust you. So he sent him out. And then it was very touch and go. Like, for example, the first out was a line drive to third base. And if that ball had gone through, we're probably seeing Peterson come out of the game with a huge ovation. But after that line drive, he got sharper than he'd been. And this is the human element again, too. He got sharper than he'd been in a while in that game. And he strikes out, who was it? It was one of their big boys, James Wood. He strikes out to get the second out. And then he wraps up the shutout. And he knew that his adrenaline was like back up after that line out and after the vote of confidence that Mendoza had given him to go back in the game. So he finishes it. He hugs his catcher. He hugs his manager. They have a nice moment together. And not only did the Mets get a very entertaining, crowd-pleasing win, but it was just another step of trust between players and manager and coaching staff. So it was a complete positive for the team. And something that, as I said at the beginning of telling this story, was something that doesn't just happen. It happens because people have built relationships and trust for months and even years.
Well, it's certainly good to see a complete game shutout, because those are now few and far between.
Yeah.
So we hope David Peterson has looked really good this season, and we hope that continues. But the offense looked lethargic on Saturday and lifeless on Sunday. Their lack of production at runners in scoring position continues, and that is a serious problem. It's been a season-long problem as well for the most part, in a long season, and we're not halfway there yet. But they got to get better in that category. They just have to.
They do, and it's one of the more frustrating. 100%. But for teams and their fans, it's one of the more frustrating areas when it needs improvement, because law of averages, I mean, there's not much. Like, I asked Stearns about this directly. Do you think this is complete randomness, or is it something you could coach? And he did say, to his credit on the human element, they were talking before, he's like, hey, this is happening, so we have to look into it. And he said, I do believe it's a skill to perform under pressure and to maintain that focus. So he's not completely writing it off like a pure analyst would, potentially, but he is also aware that you can't really do much about this. The hitting coach, like, I get this. I've been a fan before I was in this business. And you just want the hitting coach to be like, guys, oh my God, start hitting with runners in scoring position. Stop it. But that's like, there's nothing you can do. They're going through every hitters. They've got their routine. They have the stuff they work on. They're all working hard in the cage and doing all the stuff they do. And eventually it supposedly evens out where they start getting those hits at those times. And that's all you can really say about it. It's very frustrating if you want it to get better because there's not a lot that can be done.
Yeah, that's very true.
Usually it gets better. I mean, on the flip side of that, usually it gets better because it averages out and it tends to have a lot of randomness to it.
And it is a long season, so maybe everything could be cohesive, and there'll be more hits with runners in scoring position. But the other issue that taking a look at, especially now, Brett Beatty has got a little bit of a tweak in the groin. He's day to day. He said it's happened before, but that those infield, those young kids, Mauricio has not been consistent. He's hit a couple good home runs, one bomb, which was pretty amazing to see. Luis Angel Acuna is really getting sporadic chances to really hit on a regular basis, although he's in a game as a pinch runner or for defense. And Vientos is now beginning a AAA assignment, and he'll be back shortly, I guess within the next week or so. So if all things go well there. So who do you think could be the odd man out when Vientos returns?
I as of now, it seems pretty clear that it would be Mauricio because he just doesn't seem ready for the big leagues. We're just seeing the quality of the at bats, just too much chase. It's like what we're seeing with Francisco Alvarez, but more. And you could argue that Alvarez could use a little time in AAA too. That's a whole other discussion.
I agree.
No, really. I mean, I'm not saying that as a dig on him. It's like but
he chases.
But maybe your catching core right now, if you're the Mets with Torrens and Senger, well, Alvarez. Well, you didn't ask me about catching. Infield, John, is I think Mauricio is a similar issue. He just needs he missed so much time. He missed development. He already had too much chase in his game before he had the knee injury in winter ball, and so he needs to work on that. And at third base, we're seeing a few things too. Sometimes he backhands the ball. Sometimes there was a ball, a tough play. So I'm not faulting him for this, but there was a foul ball down the third baseline near the tarp on Friday, and he just didn't quite know how to approach it. And Lindor tried to give him some instruction after Mauricio didn't catch up with the ball. Just clearly things on both sides of the ball where player development should probably work with this player for a little while. So that would be the obvious choice to go to the minors.
Yeah, obviously they still believe in him. They gave him a nice opportunity to come up to see what what his performance would be in the majors, and he's got incredible potential. But I agree with you. I think that he may be the odd guy out, and some more time in the AAA would probably do him really would really benefit.
And listen, not to be down on him, they believe in him. He's got unbelievable athleticism and potential. That missed time is really a killer. But if he continues his progression, look, at the end of the 23 season, after he debuted, and Vientos had already debuted, I thought it was pretty clear that Mauricio, of all those guys, was the third baseman of the future. Now, Vientos has since proven himself to be a big-time player, so the dynamic's different. But that's just to say, Mauricio, you watched him late in 23, and you go, this is the guy. So, no reason to change our minds on that big picture. It's just that roster crunch wise, he's the clear choice right now.
Yep. We're still about 6 weeks away from the trading deadline. Any indications of what the Mets might or might not do when they get to that deadline?
I think, John, when you look around the diamond at positions to upgrade, the only one there's even really a conversation is center field. Other than that, there's no space or even necessarily need to add somebody. So Tyrone Taylor's been great, which is why they're not looking for a center fielder right now. And so Jose Siri had a setback. He was supposed to be basically the everyday center fielder when they acquired him, not Taylor. And his broken leg is not healing. The bone is not healing the way that the team wants it to. So I asked when we heard that on Friday, people that I asked these things, does this mean you're looking for a center fielder externally right now? And it's like, no, Taylor's been good enough, not looking right now. But approaching the trade deadline, that's a position where they might acquire somebody in center to supplement Taylor or to start over at Taylor if the right deal is available. You could look at DH, although they do like to have that position open as in a rotation. And then after the loss of AJ Minter and some of the inconsistencies with Ryan Stanek, I think it's pretty clear they could use another power arm at the back end of the bullpen. So there you go.
And we're still 6 weeks away, so we'll see what happens over that time period and what the Mets eventually do at the trade deadline. Just to wrap it up here, Andy, the team is drawing incredibly well. They're packing out Citi Field. The support has been amazing. Ownership has got to be happy with all the support they're receiving at this point. And this also comes off of your TikTok account again, where you after the walk-off win or whatever, you sat in the dugout for a little bit and you kind of gave a sense of what that vibe has been. And I really like that because you made some really good points there. This place really has become the place to be this summer when it comes to baseball fans and following their favorite team, maybe even more than last year, and even going back to 2015. What's your assessment on what's going on in Flushing right now?
Yeah, it's special. Really special. I really meant what I said in that video, and thanks for the compliment about it. But it was like there's an energy that a building can hold. This part's not unique to Citi Field, but it's always cool whether it's a game or a concert. You've been to a ton of big events in your life, sporting and otherwise, and when there was just an incredible energy.
I was there at the Beatles. I saw the Beatles there, my friend.
Right. That's right. You told me that. Man, don't even get me started there. I can't even go down that lane if I want to stay focused on our baseball conversation. But like when a really dynamic game or event of any kind has just ended and people have just emptied out, the building kind of holds that energy. And it's like special. It's this human energy still lingering in the air. And I was standing in the dugout. This was Tuesday night, I believe. Oh, yeah, I think it was after McNeil's walk-off, extra inning walk-off. And so I just was thinking, and it's not the first time since last fall, but once again thinking this place has become a very unique place in baseball, and it only happened late last year. 15 was very special. I don't mean to diminish that at all. It's different. No. So I don't even want to compare it to that distant memory right now because that had some very special moments. But I can compare it to last year when even – and that there's a huge series coming up against the Nationals in September. And I remember being psyched to get out there and cover it. It was a big series. And you get there, you sit down, it's the first inning, and you're like, well, where the hell is everybody? And it's like kind of a dead energy. And believe me, ownership noticed that too. And as Steve Cohen said publicly in spring training, like, where were the people? I signed Soto. Like, can you come now? I'm paraphrasing him, but that's basically what he said. And you've noticed Nimmo's been pointed about this too. Nimmo last year gave an on-field interview with Steve Gelbs after one of those games. He was like, we need you guys to come out. And it's been something that the team has thought about. And this year it's been great. So, of course, this crowd energy was unbelievable very late, very, very late last year into the postseason. It's like I had moments like that in the postseason too, where you're still there late. And you're like, man, this was special energy. And now they're just continuing it. And credit to the fans, because it's not the OMG team anymore. So I think they've proven that wasn't an isolated lightning in a bottle moment for enthusiasm about the Mets. This is not the OMG team at all. Like, it's a different club, different feeling, different personalities. Juan Soto's bringing a very different personality himself, where he's not really even into that OMG type stuff. I mean, we've seen Starling Marte basically have to shove him and literally whack him on top of the head to do like the camera thing. So this isn't the Iglesias Severino Mets, right? And yet, in their own unique way, they're holding the crowd's attention, and they're winning dramatically, and they're really good. And I think Mets fans are just showing, as I'm sure they showed in the 80s. I don't know firsthand, but I've heard and read, as they showed a few times in the 2000s, that when this team earns their attention, they show up and they show up loud. And that's just what we're seeing going on right now. It's great fan energy because we're still at the beginning of something on the rise. Yankee Stadium has great energy too, John. And so I don't want to undersell it. Like, they're amazing with like the Tuesday night against a random opponent, and they are packed and loud. You're like, man, just day in and day out they draw, and these fans are into it. But there's also this thing on Yankee land. It's like, oh my God, everything's misery if we don't win the World Series. How are they going to blow it? It's like a lot of negativity in there, even though they show up. And with the Mets right now, it's like on an ascent. So everything's kind of exciting. And therefore, I think there's more natural supportiveness coming from the fans. And like, we're all on a ground floor of something that's going somewhere that not even the Yankee fans feel like they could enjoy right now. I'm generalizing, but that's like kind of my general sense.
Yeah, I've been blessed because I was able to go to Game 4 in the '69 World Series. I was at 60 games in '86, including every playoff game, all the World Series games, and then moving to Tennessee, made it a little bit more difficult 25 years ago, but I still was up there for 2000, and I haven't been to a game this season. That's why I can't wait to come up to New York, and I'll be at all the Subway Series games. I'll be up for the David Wright retirement number weekend, and so I'm looking forward to feeling that energy because I did attend a couple of the games last postseason. Both losses to the Dodgers at Citi Field, so that wasn't fun. But that energy is there, and I just the Met fans come out, and this year seems really magical because they are attending in big numbers, and it seems to be a fun atmosphere, and I can't wait to experience it myself when I get up there in July.
It's amazing, John. And just a little pro tip for you before we go. Next time you go to a Mets-Dodgers playoff game, just find out which one Dave Roberts wants to lose and go to that one, because then you have a fun time.
Well, I didn't pick right last season.
That's right.
Anyway, Andy, it's always a pleasure to have you on the show. Of course, your work at Baseball Night in New York and at SNY, and you're just one of the top insiders there is. And I have to tell you that you're new to TikTok. Yeah. And I'm really enjoying what you're doing there, and fans are starting to, are starting to really respond to what you're putting up there, and continued success with everything that you do, my friend.
Well, thank you very much, John. Here's hoping the Chinese government doesn't have all the information on my phone now, because I am enjoying TikTok, but we'll see where that goes. I should just take certainly. You can edit that out.
Well, it's okay. It's all right. We'll have you back in a few weeks and have you on the TC again, and that'll be fun. Thank you, Andy.
All right, thanks, John.
Always a pleasure to have Andy Martino with us, and we look forward to having Andy back in just a few weeks right here at the Terry Collins Show. We want to tell you about Tunnel to Towers, our presenting sponsors and our friends at this great foundation. Over the next few weeks, the Tunnel to Towers Foundation will be delivering mortgage-free homes to the families of 6 more of America's greatest heroes. If a first responder or service member is killed in the line of duty and leaves behind young children, Tunnel to Towers will pay off their mortgage. And if a first responder or service member is catastrophically injured, the foundation will provide a specially adapted smart home. You can learn more about the programs and recipients at t2t.org. And Tunnel to Towers, of course, was born from the ashes of 9/11 by the family of a New York City firefighter killed in the line of duty. While the foundation's early beneficiaries were in the New York area, the program now helps families across the country. Of the 6 homes being delivered in the coming weeks, 2 are in T2T's Let Us Do Good Village in Florida, with 1 each in Mississippi, North Carolina, South Carolina, and Idaho. You can help Tunnel to Towers continue on its mission to do good by donating $11 a month at t2t.org. That's T, the number 2t.org. And now Tunnel to Towers has expanded its student Athlete Advocacy Program. This is a way for college athletes to grow their own brand while at the same time explain the Tunnel to Towers mission to a younger generation. The newest advocates are Caitlin Collins, a lacrosse player at Rutgers, and Jack Hull, a water polo player at Penn State Barrand. They'll be speaking about the foundation and sharing its stories to their own social media feeds. You can learn more about that student athlete advocacy program at t2t.org. And once again, we appreciate all of the work that they do for everyone that was in the service. And they're just an amazing group of people and do so many wonderful things. We're going to take a look back at June 2015 with TC right after this message from Terry on behalf of Tunnel Towers.
I'm former Mets manager Terry Collins. The Tunnel Towers Foundation is very important to me, and I look for ways to try to support them any way I can. If a first responder is killed in the line of duty, T2T will pay off the mortgage for their family. That's just one of the ways T2T makes a difference. You can support their cause as well by donating $11 a month. Go to t2t.org. Let's go Mets, and let's help Tunnel Towers.
Each month here on the Terry Collins Show, we go back 10 years and we kind of review the month that happened 10 years ago. So now it's time to take a look at some notable moments from that amazing season, this time in June 2015. Terry, we've discussed the Steven Matz debut on June 28th on previous shows. He was one of those guys that made a part of that impressive starting rotation. Now, integrating Matz into that rotation in 2015 in June, but also having the guns in your arsenal, DeGrom, Harvey, Syndergaard, Neese, Cologne. How is that like as a manager to have all of those guns in your arsenal?
Well, John, when I first started in professional baseball, the one thing you realize right out of the gate is the game's about pitching. It's all, and you look at all the teams that won, they've got a rotation of 2 or 3 guys that, those nights, your chances of winning are sufficiently higher than the other teams. And so here I have a team in 2015 that's got 6 starters, and knowing every time I left my apartment to head to the ballpark, my chance of winning that night was big. And also you figured, hey, look, we scratch out a couple of runs, 2 or 3 runs. We started to fix our bullpen to get to Jeurys Familia in the 9th inning. Our chances of winning increased, and those kids did it. I mean, to have that young pitching staff, and there's days today where I'll be sitting out on my porch and I'll think about, gosh, I wish I could have had those 5 kids just together for 5 years. I mean, I'd like them for 10, but to be able to run one of those guys out there every single night for a long time would have been some kind of impressive.
Yeah, it certainly would have been, and it was an amazing thing. But back in June, losing 7 straight games entering June 25th, Jacob deGrom pitched 8 scoreless innings against the Milwaukee Brewers, allowing only 4 hits, 8 strikeouts, receiving only 2 runs of support from the offense at the time. For the month of June, deGrom went 3-1 with a 1.21 ERA, 37 innings pitched, and this helped propel him into the 2015 All-Star game as the Mets' lone representative in Cincinnati. Talk to us about Jake, a complex guy, but a simple man, as his theme song was every time he took the mound. What was Jake like in the clubhouse and your interactions with him?
Well, first of all, the thing that impressed me, and we've done shows on about Jake. What impressed me the most is he had a feel for pitching. He understood what he had to do to get outs. There were nights where maybe he didn't have his best curveball or his best slider, and yet he just didn't, not throw it. He picked out certain situations where, he'd throw one even though he knew it wasn't real good, but he was good enough and had command enough to not really leave it in the strike zone. And then all of a sudden, 2 innings later, he found that feel for it. And that's the knowledge that Jake had about what it took for him to be a pitcher. Now, this is before he threw 100. When he was with me, he was 93 to 96 and still a great arm. But, his presence on the mound, I go back to in the playoff game in Los Angeles, Game 5, what he did in Game 5 with probably his secondary stuff. I mean, it wasn't even his best outing. And yet you looked up and he gave us 6 2/3 innings of outstanding baseball, and that was Jake DeGrom. And in the clubhouse, the most fun-loving guy you ever saw. He and David Wright were very, very close friends. They lockered next to each other, and David teased him all the time, and Jake took it and laughed it off. And that's the kind of guy he was, and everybody in that clubhouse loved him.
Well, Jake DeGrom certainly will never be forgotten by Met fans, and he's come back in a nice way for Texas this year. But getting back to June of 2015, from the no-hitter against the Mets by Chris Heston, who we've talked about here, 7-game losing streak beginning June 17th, lack of offense. It was a difficult month for the team, and the scrutiny of the fans and the New York media certainly didn't help. You know, it's New York, as you all know. And it kind of prompted Sandy Alderson on June 26 to reference a phrase that made the media headlines. He referred to it as Panic City. And that was kind of like Sandy's way of saying, you know, he was just going at the media a little bit. And then after you guys complete a sweep of the Cincinnati Reds, Sandy was in another press conference, lighthearted, calling the media the residents of Panic City. Talk to us about that time. How hard it was to handle that day-to-day media scrutiny during this difficult month?
Well, John, it's always hard to, when things aren't going good, again, to go up there and sit there twice a day, before a game and after a game when things aren't going well, and be accountable for it. And that was the job of the manager. That was my job, to sit there and try to answer the questions honestly and as best I could, and yet go in that clubhouse and get the guys to understand, hey, tonight's over. We got to change. We got to go about something. We got to try to pick it up tomorrow and start a streak. And whatever happens the next time, we got to block that out and we got to move forward. You can't keep looking behind. And that's the hardest part about the fans is, because of the history perhaps of the Mets at times where our fans can get down, you can't let the players get down. And so at that particular time of the season, it was tough. And then, of course, Sandy came up and, made it so much easier for me, especially for me. And then all of a sudden in July started making moves that, because he believed in that team also. And then all of a sudden it turned the season around. Oh,
of course it did. And after that difficult June of 2015, the Mets will enter the month of July in need of someone, more people to be brought in on the offensive side. And it led to one of the most historic weeks in Mets history. And Terry, we will discuss that with you, that July of 2015 with you next month. So it's always good to see you. And we appreciate this look back at 2015.
Thanks, John. Always good to see you. Stay safe.
Thanks. TC with a look back at a tough month for the Mets. That was June 10 years ago in 2015. That team did bounce back big time to make it into the World Series. Now it's time for another Tunnel to Towers Hero of the Week. Let's go to that right now.
My name is Bobby Espericueta, and my husband was Jose Luis Espericueta. Everybody knew him as Speedy. He was a police officer for the Mission Police Department in Mission, Texas. He wanted to make a difference. He wanted to do something better. He loved doing what he did, and he did it with a passion. It was a Thursday. We were all home at the time. His best friend finally called me back, and he said, I need you to go to the hospital. I could hear them working on him, and to this day, I still hear. And shortly after that, the doctor came out and just said that he had lost him. And I just dropped to the ground, and everything else from that night was a blur. They later told me about the incident, and it was a son who had shot at his mom. And in a split second, with no aim whatsoever, the suspect was able to grab his gun and shot my husband. My world was turned upside down. I wasn't sure how I was going to move forward, let alone, on my own. My son, when it happened, was 12 at the time, and my daughter was 19. One of the biggest fears was trying to have that normalcy in our life after everything that happened. I wanted my kids to be okay. Shortly after it happened, Frank Stiller actually contacted my brother, and he kind of told him, this is what our foundation does, and this is what we want to do for her. The Tunnel to Towers Foundation paid off our mortgage. The grieving part of it is forever. But just knowing that our mortgage is paid off, it's just like a sense of relief, a sense of just peace. I can't even describe it. Tunnel to Towers Foundation. Let us do good.
We will have another T to T story right here on next week's show. I want to remind everybody you can support the Terry Collins Show by liking and subscribing it to your favorite podcast platform or on our YouTube channel. Your likes and reviews of this show help a great deal, and all of the past 2 seasons are available on the podcast platforms you listen on, or go to YouTube at that channel that we have there. So you'll find a lot of great content, and that is youtube.com/The Terry Collins Show. We also want to remind you to check out Amazing Conversations with Jay Horowitz, a New York Mets podcast hosted by the foremost Mets historian. Each week, Jay brings on guests from all eras in Mets history. That's Amazing Conversations with Jay Horowitz, available on all podcast platforms and on YouTube. That'll wrap up another edition of the Terry Collins Show. Thanks to our creative director, Marsh, and our researcher, Dominic DiBiase. For Terry Collins, this is John Arezzi. We'll see you next time.